bringing the people behind our food to life.
Today we'll be making a Papillote parchment package with wild mushrooms and some Northwest salmon. So Papillote is a unique cooking method of moist heat cooking in parchment paper that lends a lovely presentation for your guests. So we've got a number of wild mushrooms. There are two cultivated varieties, the maitake and the shiitake, and two wild harvested mushrooms, the hedgehogs and the yellowfoot. And the yellowfoot are named because they have this yellow stem. It's like a yellow foot. And hedgehogs because they have these little spines on them, just like a hedgehog would have. We'll start with the cultivated mushrooms. Each of the mushrooms has a different cooking preparation and cleaning method. So the first mushroom we're going to do are the maitake mushrooms. It means dancing butterfly mushrooms. These are super easy. These are one of the cultivated mushrooms. So they're never touching the earth or the ground or anything like that. So essentially they are clean. And washing them, I found, only makes them soggy. So all you do, these are great, you just break them up. They come in these clusters like this. You can break them up in big pieces, or you can break them up into individual petals. So they have sort of a garlicky flavor, real deep woodsy mushroom flavor, and a crisp texture. So for anyone who is not fond of the silky texture of mushrooms, these they have a toothsomeness that they might find more appealing. So the second mushroom that we have are shiitake mushrooms, and these are also cultivated. So you can roast them whole as is, or you can slice them or quarter them. You can break them up with your hands if you'd like. The fibers run down the stem of the mushroom so they break really easily. Now, if you're going to cook your maitake and your shiitake together in the same pot, in the same pan, you'll want to make the shiitake a little bit larger than the maitake pieces because they cook faster than the maitake. So now we're going to prepare the wild mushrooms. People think that it's not okay to wash wild mushrooms. And I say horse feathers. It's fine to wash wild mushrooms. As long as you don't soak them or leave them in the wet for any length of time. You don't want to wash them and then cook them the following night. But wild mushrooms are outside in the rain soaking up water. They have water in them. You're going to have to cook that off anyway. So we might as well make our lives a little bit easier and dump them in a basin of water. And we're going to start with the hedgehogs. And so what you're going to do is dump them into the bowl and swish them around. And then you want to lift them out of the bowl as fast as you can so that they don't soak up an excess amount of water. So you're going to leave behind the little twigs and branches and bits of forest floor. What you don't want to do is tip the mushrooms out into the colander, because just like with your salad greens, you'll be tipping all of that sediment that's settled to the bottom back over your mushrooms. Now, if you really don't want to wash your mushrooms, what you can do is take a little paintbrush and you can go over the mushrooms. Now you would do this when they're dry and just brush them off and brush the insides off. Very, very easy. So that's the other way to clean them. So then once I've got them in the colander, I'll go back over them, and if there's any bits on the bottom of the stem there, you can either just pare them away, or you can, in this case, that bottom of the stem looks a little funny, so I would just cut that off. Now the other thing to look for is if the mushroom has a deep hole in the middle, as this hedgehog does, you might want to open that up and look for any pine needles or such that might have fallen in as they were growing, and give that another little swish. Now we have the yellowfoot. These are also called winter chanterelles. They're going to go in next. So again, give them a little swish around. Look for the ones that have the deep little hole in the center and just check those out. Make sure it's like that little bit of sediment comes out. I'll get these all on the platter. We'll go over to the stove and we'll start to cook them. We're going to start with the wild ones. Get the pan nice and hot. We'll add some olive oil. So you want enough oil to coat the bottom of the pan. And we're going to get this really hot. It should be hot enough that the oil is shimmering, not smoking. And we're going to add a little bit of butter. And then we'll add the mushrooms right to the pan, and they should really sizzle when they hit the pan. And what you're doing is you're trying to force out the water as quickly as possible. So these mushrooms, the winter chanterelles or yellowfoot and the hedgehogs, cook at about the same rate. So we can add them all to the pan at the same time. Now what we're going to do at this point is let them cook over high heat until all the water that comes out of the mushrooms cooks away. And then we'll turn the heat down a little bit and continue cooking them for a few more minutes. One thing I found that people are really surprised at the length of time that I cook wild mushrooms, but I found that long cooking time, especially when you do it this method and you're forcing out the water and then you're cooking them an additional period, that really helps develop the flavor and the texture of the mushroom. And you really can't overcook most mushrooms, these especially. You can burn them, so you want to keep an eye on your temperature and make sure that they're not browning too quickly. But it is very, very difficult to overcook the wild ones in particular. The longer cooking time will really help to develop the flavor and the texture of the mushrooms. So we're going to do the cultivated varieties. Again, a little olive oil in the pan. And it's basically the same method, just we don't have to cook out the water, so it's a little bit quicker. Now you can use just butter, you can use just oil, you can use a combination of both. It's really up to you what your cooking medium is. These mushrooms, you'll see, are sizzling in the pan. That's how you know that the water has cooked out fully. They've come back to a sizzle. And at this point, I'm going to turn the heat down to about medium. And continue cooking these for about maybe 5 more minutes or so. Chanterelles, maybe 8 to 10 minutes. So these I've let sit a little bit. Now that's another trick with cooking mushrooms, especially the ones that absorb a lot of oils, like the shiitake. If you put them in the pan and you let them sit there, what they'll do is they'll absorb a bit of the oil, sometimes quite a bit of the oil, but then as they brown, they'll release the oil back into the pan. And they've already got a nice brown color there. So we'll add some of the shallots and garlic. Now you can add leeks, you can add onions. Once the water is gone, it's a good time to add the salt. And the other thing we're going to add are some herbs. And I've got some thyme and chives here, and I'll add the thyme at this point and the chives a little bit later on. So these, I think, are just about done. And so the last thing that we're going to add is a little bit of Madeira. You can add Madeira, Marsala, white wine, red wine, vermouth, sherry, all of those, really great. So you're adding the Madeira for the flavor, and Madeira pairs particularly well with mushrooms. So we're going to add this, and then you don't have to do this next step, but it does add a certain je ne sais quoi to the dish, if you can. A little fire, and it's fun. And if you have guests, it really impresses them. Be careful of brandy, it'll hit the ceiling. Madeira doesn't have quite as much alcohol as the brandy does, so it's a little bit of a safer bet. So just avoid, going over to smell it while you're adding the Madeira. A little bit of fresh black pepper. And once that Madeira is cooked, you just want to taste them, make sure that they're to your liking. And those are delicious. I'm going to add the chives now, so that they'll cook a little bit in there. And then we're going to just let this sit until it's about room temperature. And we'll do just about the same thing to this. We're going to add some shallots and some garlic, fresh herbs. Add a little bit more of that Madeira. Woo, that was a good one. Don't tip your pan up while you're pouring, because there is the possibility that that flame could leap back in. What you want to do is pour it, put the bottle aside, and then tip your pan up, just so that the gas flame jumps into the pan and catches. Now, if you don't have a gas flame, you can take one of those little clicker lighters and light it that way. And like I said, you don't need to do that part. It's just kind of fun. Okay, again, a little pepper. Now, because we're going to put these all in the same dish, we can toss them together. So now that we have our mushrooms prepared, we're going to cut and fold them into the parchment paper. So I've got a sheet of parchment paper, big enough that when folded in half will accommodate the piece of fish or whatever else you're putting inside. Take your scissors, and then just like a Valentine's Day heart, you're going to cut your parchment. And the name Papillote comes from the French papillon, meaning butterfly. And there are a couple of different theories as to why. One is that the piece of paper looks like a butterfly once it's cut. The other is that you're wrapping your food in a cocoon that will emerge when you go to eat it. I'm just going to take a little bit of olive oil, brush it right on the bottom. You can do butter here too if you'd like. Then we'll take our fish and put that down. A little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And then our mushroom mixture, which will add lots of the flavor. So cooking in parchment paper is a moist heat cooking method, even though you're doing it in the oven and it's baking. So we need to add a little bit of moisture. And this could be broth or wine or lemon juice, anything is fine. And then we're going to fold the paper. You want to start at the top of the heart, and you're going to give that 2 folds. And that's going to make a nice secure start to your parchment package. And once you've got that first fold down, you're just going to fold the paper over itself, sort of as if you were making a fan perhaps to seal it. So make sure that each time you fold it over, you really get that pushed down, secured. Now you want to leave a little bit of room in there, enough for it to puff up, but not enough so that it's lost inside. So then once you get to this bottom end, you're going to fold it a couple of times in, maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe even 4 times, and really get that sealed in there. And then what I like to do, just to make sure that it's really, really secure in there, is I take something like the bottle or the back of a knife or even a little bowl, and really push that down and get that sealed. Then we take our baking sheet and put the package right on there. And it goes into the oven, about 400 degrees, and depending on the size of the protein that you're using, it could take anywhere from 4 to 12 minutes. So our parchment package is ready. We're gonna pull it out of the oven, and this part's really essential. You want to get it to your guest as quickly as possible because it'll start to deflate. So bring it to the table, serve it to your guest, and either open it for them or let them open it up. And there you are. Salmon in Papillote with wild mushrooms.
From the time you actually see a mushroom until the time it's full grown is only about a 5 to 7 day period. And that's truly the most amazing thing about mushrooms, is the fact that they grow so fast. You can practically watch them grow.